Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today's video is part 1 of the Philips G7000 Hack Attack series. Basically, many thanks to Paul Mills for donating this to the channel. It's a European G7000. We think it's got power supply issues. So what I've done is I've went straight into the back of it, had a little play around, make sure that the motherboard's fine. The motherboard's clean. It's got one capacitor. I think I'm going to change just to be safe and sorry. So this is the PSU here, that's the motherboard, and this is the RF modulator. So I'm just going to disconnect the RF modulator for now. Now, because this has got a membrane on it and the membrane's very flaky, I don't really want to be disconnected from the motherboard, so I'm just going to leave it here for now. So I'm just going to do a zoom in here so you can see that the power supply has corrosion around here. So basically something's leaked and it's went through the board. Now I suspect this isn't the original power supply. At the top here we've got some corrosion as well, and a little bit down here. Now if you flip it over, it sort of looks alright from the top end, but you know, that doesn't mean it is, because you can obviously see the corrosion on the back. And you'll notice straight away that the power supply has had some sort of dodgy replacement, I think, and it's just been, you know, taped up with some electrician's tape. It's not ideal. Like I say, I think this is not the original power supply for this unit. So going forward, what I was thinking was, what's the point of repairing this thing? Old power supplies are the bane of old technology. Using old power supplies can cause more damage than anything else. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to check the power supply here. I've took it out. Now, according to the spec sheets, the G7000 should be running with a 9-volt power supply. There's a little regulator in there with a 5-volt hit and miss. So basically what should happen is if you plug in a 12-volt, it should be alright. Anything above 14-volt, anything more than that will cause damage. So what I've decided to do is literally take this power supply out. I don't think it's worth fixing, because I don't think it's going to be reliable. As I'm testing this here, I'm only getting 3.5 volts, so that gives you an idea why the machine's not working. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run a cable from the board itself straight to the back of the unit and put a socket on the back, so you can put an external power supply in, a 9-volt power supply straight in the back, take it out if you don't using it. And that'll basically get the machine up and running. And using a modern power supply, you just know it's going to be much more safer. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm just testing to see which colours are positive and negative, and then that's just going to go the journey. So as you can see, it's got these weird screws in that are right pain to take in and out. They're like these really big, thick, flathead screws. The ribbon seems all right. But there's a 90, I would say about 80% chance that the membrane will be broken. So rather than taking it in and out and making it 100%, I just thought, right, I'm just going to leave it as. There's not a lot to these machines, to be honest. You'll find that in older consoles and computers. So I'm just going to leave that there. There's a plus and minus on there. That's where I'm going to wire it to, and then it's just going to go back to the back of the machine there. There is a cable from the RF modulator which goes straight out the machine. It's not a connect-in one. So what I've decided is, with this series, what we're going to do is we're going to do a load of modifications to this. So the first one on today's video is we'll get the power supply sorted. Once we've got that going, what we're going to do is look at doing a composite modification, so we can get some composite connections going, so we don't have to rely on the RF, as most modern TVs just don't like these old signals. I'm just removing the cables off here. I'll chat as I'm sort of doing stuff. What we're going to do is, once we've done the module, the console itself came with only one joypad. Now, the early G7000s for some reason came with all these cables embedded into the case, so you couldn't even disconnect the joypads. But there is an internal socket which is I can't get my head around it. So what you can do, there's a modification to get Atari 2600 pads. Pretty much every joystick ever made will work on it if I do that. So what I'm thinking is 2 modifications from E and B controller straight to the back of the case. It has actually got the molding knockouts on the back for them, so it should be quite a simple modification. Now, one of the reasons I'm thinking this is going to be a good video is because out of 1 to 10 on hardness, I would say this is literally a 1 or a 2. It's very easy. All the stuff I'm doing here, as long as you can sort of solder semi-well, you shouldn't have any issues. Now, a lot of these second generation G7000s had external stuff on them already, so it would have had an external power supply. Now, the problem with all power supplies is if the regulators aren't working properly in the board, the voltages are all wrong. So all you do is you put one in, you turn it on, and then all of a sudden, bang, you'll see some smoke. It's sent too much current through to the console itself, and you've just done loads of damage to the motherboard. So it's just not worth sometimes fixing this old stuff. All my sort of collection, me Commodore 64s, me VIC-20s and all that, I use modern power supplies. There's companies that make nicely branded Commodore 64 power supplies, Spectrum power supplies. It's worth paying, you know, if you love your computers and stuff like that, 30 to 50 quid for a good power supply. And by all means, keep the originals, but if you insist on using them, I would thoroughly get them tested if you don't know how to do it yourself, because it's just not worth all the headaches and problems it'll cost you more than 50 quid to fix a broken board and replace a power supply, so it's worth just doing it up front. So I'm just soldering these 2 wires on, and then I'm just cleaning them with some IPA, and basically what I'm going to do is put a socket on the end of these and then put it into the back of the board. So going forward, all we need to do is put a nice 9-volt power supply straight in the back, and that'll solve that problem. Growing up, one of the first places I ever saw one of these is when I went to a place in Gateshead called Shopping City, and they had a great little computer department, and I always remember this sitting there next to an Oric 1, Commodore 64, a VIC-20, Spectrum, and always had a Dragon 32, which they were always trying to get rid of Dragon 32s. But it's probably one of the first consoles I remember seeing, this in the Atari 2600. These are the ones that I remember showing me age here. We're all going back 40 years here. So, you know, it's old tech. And as you can see, what I've done is just connect that up, and I've put a connector on the back. So I'm just tightening the motherboard into the case. It's not the most... It's 2 screws, and you know, considering you're literally whacking cartridges in and out of this thing, it's not secured to the case very well. So I'm just tightening all that up. I've managed to pick up 3 or 4 games. From the looks of them, it's not Xbox Series X or PlayStation 5 quality. We're a lot more talking actually not as good as Atari 2600, but you know, it's a bit of history, and it's good to have these things and play them. I mean, this thing was sold as being a console stroke computer. I don't know if I would want to use this membrane keyboard. I think, you know, some people thought that the Spectrum membrane keyboards were horrific. This thing is, yeah, I wouldn't want to be typing in a listing from a magazine on this thing. So I'm just putting it all back together here. And it's, you know, it's not too bad condition wise. It's clean. The silver on the front is it's paint, so it's very easily scratched off, and obviously black plastic underneath. But you know, it's a you could always use it as a display item on a shelf or something. But I prefer to actually use these things, so not a bad thing. We'll get in the next one. I think we'll do the composite module next. I think we'll get that working. So just from putting the screws in here, and I've ordered a new PSU from Amazon. It was like £3 or £4. I can't remember what it was now. So I've went for a 9-volt one, and that should work no problem at all. And I think for picture quality wise, it's definitely worth doing the composite mod next. You know, I've got a big telly in the attic where I sort of play games up there. Definitely all the retro stuff, and these sort of, I mean, it's about 10-year-old. The telly, it's an old LCD, but even them don't like RF tuning into some of this old stuff. So we'll get a composite on there, and we'll get it up and running. I've got an Atari 2600 as well. I'm going to do a composite mod on that as well, and do a video for getting that on. As there you go. I'll put that around there. And I'm thinking, even though I'm going to keep the RF on this, I'm thinking I might put a socket on as well, because all these cables, it's you know, it's mad. The joypad's a weird looking thing. It's like an analog stick. It's hard to explain what it is, but it doesn't feel particularly nice. So I think, you know, going forward, a nice Atari 2600 joypad on there, spot on. So thanks guys for sticking with this and my ramblings on. Some great content coming up soon. This is part 1 done. Like I say, keep an eye out for part 2, and we'll do that composite mod. Thanks for subscribing and watching. Thanks for all the support. I'll see you soon.